My name is Penelope, and I'm 32 years old. 16 years ago, my parents kicked me out of our home because my twin sister Cassandra got pregnant, and somehow that was my fault. They said I should have been watching her more closely. Now I own a successful business and live in a beautiful home while they've struggled financially for years. Yesterday, I got a call I never expected. My parents and Cassandra, along with her 3 kids, want to move in with me because they've been evicted. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to make tough choices about toxic family members. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up with an identical twin sister sounds magical to most people. You must have had a built-in best friend. Strangers would often say, smiling at Cassandra and me in our matching outfits. But the reality was far more complicated. While we shared the same face, same birthday, and same home, we couldn't have been more different in personality. From an early age, I was the responsible one. I did my homework without being asked, kept my room tidy, and always followed the rules. Cassandra was the opposite, charming, spontaneous, and constantly testing boundaries. Our parents noticed these differences too, but instead of encouraging balance, they leaned into them. Cassandra became the special one, who needed extra attention, extra allowance, and extra forgiveness. I was the sensible one, who could take care of herself and shouldn't complain when things weren't fair. The pattern was established early. When we were 7, Cassandra broke my science project the night before it was due. I had spent weeks building a solar system model, carefully painting each planet and measuring the distances between them. Cassandra knocked it off my desk during one of her tantrums. When I cried to our parents, they sighed and said, "You know how she is, Penelope? You should have put it somewhere safer." By the time we were 10, the dynamic was deeply entrenched. If Cassandra got poor grades, our parents hired tutors and blamed the teachers. If I got anything less than an A, I was not applying myself and lost privileges. When Cassandra stole my clothes, which happened constantly because she never did her laundry, our parents would tell me, "Sharing is caring, Penelope. Don't be selfish." I learned to cope by focusing intensely on my future. While Cassandra lived entirely in the moment, I developed detailed plans for college and beyond. I kept these dreams mostly to myself as our parents tended to dismiss my ambitions. "Not everyone needs college," my father would say when I talked about scholarships. "Don't think you're better than us," my mother would add, though I never suggested any such thing. By high school, our paths had diverged even further. I was taking all honors classes, working part-time at the local library, and saving every dollar for college. Cassandra was busy building her social status, dating popular boys, attending every party, and cultivating a reputation as the fun, wild twin. Our parents enabled her lifestyle, completely giving her a midnight curfew, while mine remained at 10, even though we were the same age. "Cassandra needs to express herself," our mother would explain. "You're different, Penelope. You like being home." The truth was, I didn't particularly like being home. Home was where I felt invisible unless I was being asked to cover for Cassandra or help her with homework she'd neglected. But I endured it, keeping my eyes on the prize graduation and freedom. What I didn't realize was how quickly those plans could unravel and how dramatically my life was about to change. Junior year of high school marked a turning point in our family drama. Cassandra started dating Ryan, a sophomore at the local community college. At 19, he was 3 years older than us, something that should have concerned our parents, but somehow didn't. "He's such a gentleman," my mother gushed after meeting him once, "and he comes from such a good family." What my mother meant was that Ryan's parents had money. They'd given him a brand new car for his 19th birthday, and he always wore expensive clothes. This apparently compensated for the fact that he had already dropped out of 3 classes and had a reputation for dating high school girls. I tried expressing my concerns once during a rare moment alone with my father. "Don't you think Ryan's a little old for Cassandra?" I asked carefully. My father had looked up from his newspaper just long enough to say, Your sister knows what she's doing, Penelope. Not everyone is as uptight as you are. That stung, but I'd grown accustomed to such dismissals. Still, I worried as Cassandra started staying out later and later, often coming home smelling like alcohol. Our parents either didn't notice or chose not to. When Cassandra started sleeping over at her friend Jessica's house, multiple weekends in a row, they never called to verify where she was. I knew she was with Ryan, but I'd learned long ago that being the messenger only resulted in being blamed. So I kept quiet and focused on my own life, my upcoming SATs, my college applications, and the growing savings account that represented my ticket out. Then came the night that changed everything. I was studying for a calculus test when Cassandra burst into our shared bedroom, her eyes red from crying. This wasn't unusual. Cassandra's dramatic emotional displays were a regular feature in our household, but something felt different this time. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, collapsing onto her unmade bed. I put down my pencil, shocked into silence. Cassandra was 16, same as me, too young to be a mother. Are you sure?" I finally managed. She nodded miserably. 4 months. I've been hiding it." Now I was truly stunned. 4 months. How had none of us noticed? But then Cassandra had always worn loose clothing, and she'd gained a little weight over the past year that our mother had tactfully avoided mentioning. "Does Ryan know?" I asked. Her face crumpled. "He broke up with me when I told him. Said it might not even be his." I felt a surge of anger toward Ryan, quickly followed by genuine concern for my sister. Despite our differences, she was still my twin. "We need to tell Mom and Dad," I said gently. "You need prenatal care, and we need to figure out what you want to do." Cassandra looked up at me, and something shifted in her expression, a calculation I couldn't quite read. "You're right," she said. "Let's tell them now." I should have recognized the warning signs. Cassandra never agreed with me so readily, and she never willingly sought out our parents when she was in trouble. But I was too concerned about her pregnancy to notice the trap being set. Our parents called a family meeting in the living room. My father paced while my mother sat rigidly on the couch. Cassandra and I sat opposite them, and I reached for her hand in solidarity. What happened next still haunts me. "How long have you known about this, Penelope?" My father demanded, his face red with anger. I blinked in confusion. "I just found out tonight when Cassandra told me." Cassandra pulled her hand away from mine. "That's not true," she said softly. "Penelope has known for months. She helped me hide it." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What? No, I didn't. Cassandra, why would you say that?" "Because it's true." Cassandra's voice rose dramatically. "Penelope knew I was sleeping with Ryan. She covered for me when I stayed at his place. She even helped me buy loose clothes to hide the pregnancy." Our parents turned to me with identical expressions of betrayal and fury. "Is this true?" my mother demanded. "No, I knew she was dating Ryan, but I didn't know about the rest. I wouldn't have kept that secret." But Cassandra was on a roll now, tears streaming down her face in the way that always melted our parents' hearts. "Penelope said I should wait to tell you. She said you'd make me get an abortion, and when I said I wanted to keep the baby, she told me I was ruining my life." Each lie cut deeper than the last. I had said no such things. In fact, we hadn't discussed the pregnancy at all beyond the brief conversation minutes earlier in our bedroom. But as I looked at my parents' faces, I realized with sinking dread that they believed her. They always believed her. "How could you, Penelope?" my mother whispered. "You were supposed to watch out for your sister." "Watch out for her. She's 16, same as me. She makes her own choices." "But you're the responsible one," my father said, as if that explained everything. You should have told us immediately. I just found out, I shouted, losing my composure. Don't raise your voice in this house, my father warned. You're in enough trouble. What followed was a 2-hour inquisition where nothing I said made any difference. By the end, somehow the narrative had been established. Cassandra's pregnancy was partially my fault for not being a better sister and guardian. Never mind that we were the same age. Never mind that our parents were the actual adults responsible for their minor children. The final blow came when my father cleared his throat and said, We've discussed it, and we think it's only fair that your college fund goes towards supporting Cassandra and the baby. I stared at him in disbelief. My college fund, the money I've been saving. And the money we set aside, my mother added. Cassandra will need support. She'll need to finish high school with a baby. That money was for education, and now it needs to go toward a different kind of education. But what about my education? My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. My father's expression hardened. You have options, Penelope. You're smart. You can get scholarships. Or take a gap year. Cassandra doesn't have options anymore. I looked at my sister, who had the grace to avoid my eyes. She knew what they were asking of me. To sacrifice everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned to clean up her mess. And she was letting it happen. No, I said quietly. Excuse me. My father leaned forward. No, I repeated louder this time. That's my money. I earned it. I'm not giving it up. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother spoke, her voice cold. Then you can find somewhere else to live. I thought they were bluffing. They had to be. What parents would kick out their 16-year-old daughter, mine, apparently? I was given 1 hour to pack my essentials. As I moved around our bedroom in a daze, Cassandra watched from her bed, occasionally sniffling for effect. Why? I finally asked her. Why did you lie? She shrugged, not quite meeting my eyes. They were going to be mad at me. This way they're focused on you instead. Such a simple explanation for such a profound betrayal. That was Cassandra. Always taking the path of least resistance regardless of who got hurt in the process. And I was always the collateral damage. I left that night with a backpack of clothes, my school supplies, and the cash I'd hidden in a sock drawer. About $300 that my parents didn't know about. As I walked down the driveway, I kept waiting for someone to call me back to say this had gone too far. But the door remained closed, and the house grew smaller behind me as I walked into an uncertain future. The first night away from home was the hardest. I ended up at my English teacher, Mrs. Collins' house, having walked 3 miles in the dark with nowhere else to go. I stood on her porch, soaked from the rain that had started halfway through my journey, and rang the doorbell with shaking hands. Mrs. Collins had always been kind to me, praising my essays and encouraging my college aspirations. But showing up at her home unannounced at 9 o'clock on a school night was crossing a boundary I'd never imagined breaching. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from confusion to concern. Penelope, what's happened? I tried to explain through chattering teeth, but the words kept getting tangled with unexpected sobs. Mrs. Collins ushered me inside, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders and making hot tea while I struggled to compose myself. They kicked me out, I finally managed. Because Cassandra's pregnant and I wouldn't give her my college money. To her credit, Mrs. Collins didn't immediately call Child Protective Services, though she probably should have. Instead, she listened to my whole story, asked if I felt safe returning home. I didn't, and offered her spare room, just until we figure something out. That temporary arrangement lasted 2 weeks, long enough for me to secure a more permanent situation in the basement apartment of my library supervisor's cousin. It wasn't much, a converted basement with a hot plate mini fridge and a bathroom with unreliable hot water. But it was affordable, and more importantly, mine. The next challenge was financial survival. My part-time library job wasn't enough to cover rent, food, and other necessities. I picked up weekend shifts at a local diner and evening hours stocking shelves at a grocery store. My days started at 5 in the morning and often didn't end until midnight. Homework happened during lunch breaks and bus rides between jobs. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My grades slipped from straight A's to B's and occasional C's, putting my scholarship hopes at risk. But I had no choice. It was work or become homeless again. The emotional toll was perhaps even greater than the physical exhaustion. I'd lost my family, my home, and my twin in one devastating night. The person who had been beside me since before birth had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. I couldn't process it, so I didn't try. I pushed the pain down deep and focused on survival. Occasionally, news about my family would filter through mutual acquaintances. Cassandra had the baby, a girl named Lily, in the spring of our junior year. She took a month off school, then returned for half days while our mother watched the baby. My father had taken a second job to help with expenses. They'd converted my half of the bedroom into a nursery. It was as if I'd been erased from the family narrative, replaced by Lily. No one ever mentioned trying to contact me or checking if I was okay. The few times I ran into former neighbors at the grocery store, they'd look uncomfortable and mutter something about family problems, then hurry away. The worst part was the loneliness. I'd never had many friends. Studying and working had always taken priority, and now I had even less time for socializing. Most days, the only conversations I had were transactional. That'll be $4.99s. Or, would you like fries with that? But despite everything, I refused to give up on my education. I studied during every spare moment. I met with guidance counselors who helped me apply for independent student status for financial aid purposes. I wrote scholarship essays during my breaks at the diner, sometimes on napkins when I ran out of paper. And somehow I made it. I graduated high school with a 3.7 GPA. Not the 4.0 I'd once maintained, but respectable given the circumstances. I received a partial scholarship to the state university, enough to cover tuition if I continued working to pay for housing and books. On graduation day, I sat among my classmates in the auditorium, scanning the audience out of habit. I knew my family wouldn't be there, but some small, foolish part of me hoped they might show up, might finally reach out after a year of silence. They didn't, of course, but Mrs. Collins was there, and my library supervisor, and even the owner of the diner where I worked weekends. They cheered for me when I crossed the stage, and afterward, Mrs. Collins presented me with a small cake and an envelope containing gift cards for textbooks. "We're proud of you," she said, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than exhaustion and determination. I felt valued. As I prepared to start college, I made myself a promise the family that had discarded me so easily would never again have the power to determine my worth. I would build a new life on my own terms, and I would never look back. College was both harder and more liberating than I expected. The academic demands were intense, especially while working nearly full-time, but the freedom to define myself beyond Cassandra's responsible twin was intoxicating. I chose to major in business with a focus on digital marketing, a growing field with strong job prospects. My part-time job at a local marketing agency gave me practical experience to complement my coursework. For the first time, I felt like my hard work was building towards something tangible, something that was entirely mine. The most unexpected blessing of college was finding friends who saw me clearly. My roommate Jordan was studying computer science and shared my work ethic. We often stayed up late in our tiny dorm room coding, while I created marketing campaigns, both of us fueled by cheap coffee and determination. Then there was Miguel from my economics class, whose family had immigrated from Mexico when he was 10. He understood what it meant to rebuild from nothing. And Aisha, my study partner in marketing courses, whose sharp wit and loyalty made me realize what true friendship felt like. These people became my chosen family. They didn't care about my past or my estrangement from my biological family. They valued me for who I was now. Hardworking, loyal, occasionally funny when I let my guard down enough to crack a joke. My junior year, I landed an internship at Digital Forge, a boutique marketing agency specializing in startup branding. The internship was competitive, hundreds of applicants for 3 positions, and paid enough that I could reduce my other work hours slightly. The creative director, Sophia, took a particular interest in my development. "You have good instincts," she told me after I'd presented a campaign idea that the client ended up selecting. "And you work harder than anyone I've ever met, but you need to learn to take risks." Risk-taking didn't come naturally to me. Years of walking on eggshells around my family had made me cautious, and being homeless at 16 had made security my priority. But Sophia pushed me to experiment, to try approaches that might fail spectacularly, but could also succeed beyond expectations. Under her mentorship, I blossomed. The internship turned into a part-time position during my senior year, then a full-time job offer upon graduation. My starting salary was modest by industry standards, but felt like unimaginable wealth to someone who had once counted pennies for bus fare. After 2 years at Digital Forge, I had developed a reputation for delivering campaigns that converted browsers into buyers. I had also saved enough for a security deposit on a small studio apartment, my first place without roommates since the basement apartment of my high school years. But I was beginning to feel limited. Digital Forge primarily served local businesses, and I was eager to work with larger brands to stretch my creative muscles further. When I mentioned this to Sophia during a performance review, she surprised me. "I've been waiting for you to realize you've outgrown us," she said with a smile. "You should start your own agency." The idea terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I had just turned 25. Who started their own business at 25 with no family support system, no safety net? Me, apparently. With Sophia's blessing and mentorship, I launched Penrise Digital from my studio apartment. The name was a nod to my own journey, rising from nothing, though clients assumed it was simply a play on my name. I started with just one client, a former Digital Forge client who had been disappointed when I left and eagerly followed me to my new venture. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days, handling everything from client pitches to actual campaign execution to bookkeeping. I ate ramen noodles more often than I care to admit, and sometimes went days without leaving my apartment except to meet clients. But slowly, surely, Penrise grew. One satisfied client referred another and another. I hired my first employee, a part-time graphic designer, then my second, a content writer. By the end of year 2, Penrise had a real office, albeit a small one, and 5 employees. The breakthrough came when we landed Burton Athletics, a regional sportswear company looking to expand nationally. Our campaign exceeded their targets by 200%, and suddenly, Penrise was on the map. Larger clients followed, and by my 28th birthday, I was running a team of 15 talented professionals from an office in a downtown high-rise. Financial success brought security, but not necessarily healing. At the suggestion of Jordan, who remained my closest friend, I finally started therapy. I had been so focused on survival and success that I'd never properly processed the trauma of my family's betrayal and abandonment. "You flinch when people mention family," Jordan observed over drinks one evening. "And you work like someone's chasing you. Maybe it's time to stop running." My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, helped me understand how deeply the abandonment had shaped me. My drive, my reluctance to trust my fear of rejection. "Your success is impressive," she said, but it seems partly motivated by a desire to prove your worth to people who aren't even in your life anymore. She was right, of course. Every milestone, the launch of Penrise, each new client buying my first condo at 27, had been accompanied by an imaginary conversation with my parents and Cassandra. See what I accomplished without you. See what you threw away through therapy. I began to disentangle my self-worth from both my family's rejection and my professional achievements. I started dating more seriously, allowing myself to be vulnerable with people who had earned my trust. I developed hobbies that had nothing to do with career advancement, hiking pottery, learning to cook dishes more complex than ramen. Over the years, there had been brief, unsuccessful attempts to reconnect with my family. Once during my sophomore year of college, I'd called home after a particularly good grade on a project, momentarily forgetting the gulf between us. My mother had answered, sounding older and tired. "Penelope," she'd said, neither welcoming nor rejecting. "Are you okay?" "I'm good," I'd replied, suddenly uncertain why I'd called. "I just wanted to check in." What followed was an awkward conversation that quickly turned to money. Did I have any to spare for Cassandra's childcare? Could I help with the car repairs my father needed for his commute? No questions about my life, my studies, my well-being. I'd hung up disappointed, but not surprised. Similar patterns played out in the handful of interactions that followed over the years. A Christmas card I sent that received no response. A congratulatory email when I learned through a hometown acquaintance that Cassandra had finally completed her GED. Always any contact initiated by them involved requests for financial help. By 30, I had accepted that my biological family would never be what I needed them to be. I had built a successful business, cultivated genuine friendships, created a chosen family of people who valued me. I had purchased and renovated my dream home, a modern 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood with a home office for late work nights and a guest room for visiting friends. I had healed enough to be grateful for the journey, difficult as it had been. Being kicked out at 16 had been traumatic, but it had also freed me from a toxic family dynamic that might have suppressed my potential indefinitely. Or so I thought, until the phone call that brought the past crashing back into my carefully constructed present. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting when my phone vibrated with an unfamiliar local number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something, intuition perhaps, made me excuse myself to answer. "Hello, Penelope speaking." There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in years but would recognize anywhere. "Penny, it's Mom." No one had called me Penny since I left home. I had reclaimed my full name, Penelope, as part of establishing my new identity. Hearing the nickname was jarring, like being suddenly thrust back into my 16-year-old self. "Hello?" I said, my voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." "Yes, well." She sounded older, more hesitant than I remembered. "How are you?" "I'm well," I replied, not elaborating. "What can I do for you?" Another pause. Can't a mother call to check on her daughter? The question might have seemed reasonable if not for the 16 years of near silence preceding it. "She can," I acknowledged, "but I suspect there's more to this call." My mother sighed, dropping the pretense. "We're in a difficult situation, Penny. Your father lost his job during the pandemic, and things haven't been the same since. We've been helping Cassandra with the kids. Did you know she has 3 now? Lily is 16, if you can believe it, and then there's Max, who's 10, and Emma, who's 5. I hadn't known about the younger children, though I wasn't surprised. Cassandra had never been one for careful planning. "I'm sorry to hear about Dad's job," I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. "Is he looking for something new?" "At his age, nobody wants to hire a 60-year-old man with back problems." Her tone turned bitter. "We spent our retirement fund helping Cassandra after Ryan disappeared. And now her new boyfriend has left too, and the landlord has evicted us from the apartment." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't a reconciliation call. It was a request for help. That sounds challenging, I said carefully. What are you planning to do? Well, that's why I'm calling. Her voice took on a wheedling quality I remembered all too well. We've been staying with your Aunt Carol, but her place is too small for all of us, and none of the other relatives can take us in. I see. We heard you've done well for yourself, she continued. Someone from home saw an article about your business in the paper. Said you have a big house now. Of course. Someone had seen the feature in the business section of the local paper. Penrise Digital: How Penelope Matthews Built a 7-Figure Agency from Scratch. The article had mentioned my spacious home office as part of a section on work-life balance. I have a comfortable home, I acknowledged, already knowing where this was heading. We were hoping, just temporarily, you understand, that maybe we could stay with you just until we get back on our feet. Family should help family after all. There it was. After 16 years of minimal contact, my family wanted to move in with me. All 6 of them. The irony wasn't lost on me. That was so long ago, my mother said, correctly interpreting my silence as hesitation. Water under the bridge. Don't you want to know your nieces and nephew Lily looks just like you and Cassandra at that age? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. Use the children as leverage, minimize the past harm, appeal to family obligation. But beneath my cynicism, there was a flicker of curiosity about Lily. 16 now, the same age I was when I was cast out. I need to think about this, I said finally. It's a big request. My mother made an impatient sound. We don't have much time, Penny. Carol wants us out by the end of the week. Then I'll let you know by tomorrow, I replied, refusing to be rushed into a decision this significant. I need to consider the implications. What's there to consider? We're family. The entitlement in her tone was so familiar, it was almost comforting in its predictability. I'll call you tomorrow, I repeated, then ended the call before she could push further. I returned to my meeting, but my mind was elsewhere. The past I'd worked so hard to overcome was knocking at my door, asking to be let in. The question was whether I could open that door without being dragged back into old patterns that had nearly destroyed me once before. I suggested meeting at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, where we could talk without the pressure of being in my home. My mother had pushed for me to come to Aunt Carol's, but I held firm. If this conversation was going to happen, it would be on my terms. I arrived early, securing a large table in the corner. The barista knew me as a regular and brought my usual Americano with a friendly smile. I'd chosen this place deliberately. It was part of my successful present, a reminder of how far I'd come. They arrived as a group, and the sight of them was jarring. My parents looked so much older than I'd pictured them. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and he walked with a slight limp. My mother's face was more lined, her posture less imperious than I remembered. Cassandra looked remarkably the same, still beautiful, still carrying herself with the confidence of someone who expects the world to accommodate her. She was glued to her phone as they approached, barely glancing up to register my presence. The children were strangers to me. Lily, the oldest, had the face Cassandra and I had shared at 16, but her expression was different. Watchful, assessing, lacking the manipulative charm Cassandra had wielded, or the wary determination that had become my shield. Max, the 10-year-old, seemed withdrawn, clinging to my mother's side. 5-year-old Emma was the only one who smiled, too young to understand the complicated dynamics at play. Penelope, my father said, formally extending his hand as if we were business acquaintances. I shook it, noting the calluses that spoke of manual labor. Dad, I replied, then nodded to the others. Mom, Cassandra, and you must be Lily, Max, and Emma. They settled around the table awkwardly. I ordered drinks and pastries for everyone watching as Max and Emma fell upon the treats with an eagerness that suggested such indulgences were rare. "You look well," my mother offered, studying my tailored blazer and simple but expensive jewelry. "Success suits you." "Thank you," I said, not returning the hollow compliment. "So, tell me about your situation." What followed was a litany of hardships, most self-inflicted, but presented as unforeseeable tragedies. My father had lost his warehouse supervisor position when the company downsized. He'd found sporadic work since, but nothing stable due to his age and developing health issues. My mother had never worked outside the home, and wasn't about to start now, though. She didn't phrase it quite that bluntly. Cassandra had completed her GED but had no further education or consistent employment history. She'd had 2 more children with different fathers, neither of whom provided reliable child support. She currently worked part-time at a convenience store, but often called out due to the kids' needs. "It's so hard being a single mother," she sighed, finally looking up from her phone. "No one understands the sacrifice." I bit back the obvious retort that perhaps having multiple children without stable partnerships or financial security wasn't the wisest choice, and instead focused on their immediate circumstances. "So, you've been evicted," I prompted, "because—" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Rent kept going up. We fell behind." 3 months behind," my mother clarified, as if this were a minor detail. "And the landlord wouldn't work with us, even though we've been good tenants for years." I doubted the good tenants part, but let it pass. "And now you want to move into my house, all 6 of you." "Just until we get back on our feet," my father assured me. "We're family. We'd do the same for you." The audacity of this statement momentarily robbed me of speech. They absolutely would not have done the same for me, had in fact done the exact opposite when I was at my most vulnerable. "How long do you anticipate needing to stay?" I asked, instead of pointing out the obvious. They exchanged glances. "We can't really say," my mother admitted, "until your father finds steady work, until we save enough for a deposit on a new place." "So open-ended," I clarified. "And what would your plan be during this time, Job searching childcare?" Another uncomfortable silence. Finally, Cassandra spoke up. "Well, I was thinking I could pick up more shifts if someone was there for the kids. Mom could watch Emma during the day, and you could help with Lily and Max after school." "I work," I pointed out. "Often long hours." Cassandra waved dismissively. "But you work from home sometimes, right? The article said you have a home office. That could actually be perfect for the kids to play in when you're not using it." And there it was, the expectation that I would not only house them, but also rearrange my life and workspace to accommodate their needs. No recognition that my home office was essential to my livelihood, that I had built my life and career without any help from them. "I see," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "And financial contributions to the household utilities will increase significantly with 6 additional people." My father cleared his throat. "We're a bit tight right now, as we explained. Once I find work." "So, you're expecting me to cover all expenses for an indefinite period," I summarized. "Housing, utilities, probably food as well." "You're doing so well," my mother said, gesturing vaguely at my appearance. "Surely you can afford to help your family through a rough patch, after all the sacrifices we made raising you." The conversation was playing out exactly as I had anticipated, confirming that nothing fundamental had changed. They still viewed me as a resource to be tapped, not as a person with legitimate boundaries and needs. "I have an alternative proposal," I said calmly. "I won't offer housing, but I can help in other ways. I can assist with finding an affordable apartment and covering the security deposit. I can use my business contacts to help Dad and Cassandra find more stable employment. I can set up college funds for the children." It was a generous offer, more than generous given our history, but from their expressions, you would have thought I'd suggested they live on the street. We need a place to stay now, my mother insisted. Not vague promises about jobs that might not work out. An apartment might not be affordable for us, my father added. Not in a decent neighborhood. Cassandra looked particularly offended. College funds. Lily doesn't even want to go to college. She wants to be an influencer. She glanced at her daughter, who rolled her eyes in what appeared to be disagreement, but said nothing. Those are my terms, I said firmly. I'm willing to help you get back on your feet, but I won't have you moving into my home. After everything we did for you, my mother said, her voice rising. This is how you repay us, with conditions and limitations. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a short, incredulous sound that silenced the table. Everything you did for me, you kicked me out at 16 because I wouldn't give up my college fund to support Cassandra's baby. I was homeless working 3 jobs to survive while finishing high school. I put myself through college without a penny of help from any of you. And now you want to talk about what you did for me. That was different, my father blustered. You were being selfish then. No, I said quietly. I was protecting my future from people who had proven they didn't have my best interests at heart. Just as I'm doing now. So you're still the same selfish bitch you always were, Cassandra snapped, abandoning all pretense of reconciliation. Too good for your own family. Enough. The sharp voice came from an unexpected source. Lily. She had been silent throughout the exchange, but now she turned to her mother with evident disgust. Stop it. All of you. Can't you hear yourselves? Cassandra looked shocked. Lily, stay out of this. You don't understand adult problems. I understand plenty, Lily retorted. I understand that Aunt Penelope built a life for herself after you guys threw her out, and now you want to take advantage of her success without even saying sorry for what you did. My niece turned to me, her eyes, so like mine, like Cassandra's, meeting mine directly. They've been talking about your big house for weeks, making plans for which rooms they'll take. Mom said your home office would make a perfect playroom for Emma. Grandma said you owe the family after abandoning us all these years. I felt a surge of something unexpected. Pride in this girl I didn't know who seemed to have developed a moral compass despite her upbringing. Thank you for your honesty, Lily, I said softly. My mother reached across the table, desperation evident in her expression. Penelope, please. We're out of options. We'll be on the street. No, you won't, I replied calmly. I've already outlined the help I'm willing to provide. A security deposit for an apartment, job connections, support for the children's education. That's my final offer. It's not enough, my father insisted. It's more than you gave me, I pointed out. And it comes with one condition, acknowledgement of the past. A genuine apology for abandoning me when I needed you most. The silence that followed was telling. They wanted my resources, but not accountability. My home, but not reconciliation on equal terms. I think we're done here, I said, rising from the table. My offer stands if you change your minds. Lily Max Emma, it was nice to meet you. As I turned to leave, Lily stood too. Can I talk to you sometime? Just us? I smiled at her. This unexpected ally, this girl who reminded me of myself at her age. I'd like that, I said, writing my number on a napkin and handing it to her. Call me anytime. As I walked away, I heard my mother's voice tight with anger. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. But the accusation no longer had power over me. I had faced my past and held firm to the boundaries that protected my hard-won present. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. In the weeks that followed, I experienced a complex mix of emotions. Relief that I had maintained my boundaries, grief for the family relationship I had never had and would likely never have. Anger that even after 16 years, they still viewed me primarily as a resource to exploit rather than a person to reconnect with. I expected to hear nothing further from them. Perhaps another desperate call when they realized my offer of limited assistance was the best they would get. I did not expect the text message that arrived 3 days after our coffee shop meeting. "This is Lily. Can we talk sometime without the others?" We arranged to meet at the same coffee shop the following Saturday. Lily arrived alone, dressed in jeans and a worn hoodie, looking both younger and older than her 16 years. "They don't know I'm here," she said as she slid into the chair across from me. "They'd freak if they knew." "Your secret is safe with me," I assured her. "How are you doing? Where did you end up staying?" "We're still at Great Aunt Carol's. It's super crowded, and she's always complaining, but at least it's a roof." Lily fidgeted with her paper cup. "They're still mad at you? Mom called you every name in the book after you left." I wasn't surprised. "And what do you think?" I asked, curious about this niece who seemed so different from her mother. Lily considered the question seriously. "I think you were right to say no. They were planning to just take over your life. No boundaries, no end date." She looked up at me, her expression earnest. "I've heard stories about you my whole life. Always about how selfish you were, how you abandoned the family when Mom needed you. But that never made sense to me. You were 16 too, right? Same as Mom when she got pregnant. Same as me now." "Yes," I confirmed. "We're twins." "So why was it your job to fix her mistakes? That's what I don't get." It was the question I had asked myself countless times over the years. "Family dynamics are complicated," I said carefully. "Your mother and I had established roles from an early age. She was the one who needed protection and support. I was the one expected to provide it even though we were the same age." Lily nodded slowly. "That's how it is with Max and Emma, too. I'm supposed to watch them, help them, give up my stuff for them. Mom says it's what big sisters do." The parallel wasn't lost on me. "It's good to help family," I said, "but not at the expense of your own well-being or future." "That's why I wanted to talk to you," Lily admitted. "I'm in the same position you were. I want to go to college, but Mom says we can't afford it, and I need to help with the younger kids. She wants me to get a full-time job after graduation instead." My heart ached for this girl caught in the same cycle I had escaped. "What do you want to study?" "Computer science," she said, a spark of enthusiasm lighting her eyes. "I'm good at it. My teacher says I have a natural aptitude for coding." "Like my friend Jordan," I murmured, thinking of my college roommate who now ran her own tech company. Over the next hour, Lily shared her dreams, her frustrations, and her fears. She was intelligent and thoughtful, with none of Cassandra's manipulation or entitlement. Somehow, despite her upbringing, she had developed ambition and a strong sense of personal responsibility. By the time we parted, I had made a decision. "I'd like to help you, Lily. Not with loans or handouts, but with a path forward. Would you be interested in an after-school internship at my company? Paid, of course. And I'd like to set up that college fund I mentioned specifically for you." Her eyes widened. "Seriously? You'd do that for me, even after everything?" "You're not responsible for your mother's actions or choices," I told her. "Just as I wasn't responsible for them 16 years ago. You deserve a chance to build your own future." This marked the beginning of a new chapter in my family story, one focused on breaking destructive patterns rather than repeating them. Lily began interning at Penrise 3 afternoons a week, showing a natural talent for digital analytics. I introduced her to Jordan, who became an additional mentor in her coding journey. My parents and Cassandra eventually accepted my original offer of help with a security deposit for a small apartment, though they did so grudgingly and without the acknowledgement or apology I had requested. Our interactions remained minimal and largely transactional. exactly as they had been before their housing crisis brought them back into my life. I maintained firm boundaries with them while nurturing my relationship with Lily. When Cassandra complained that I was turning her daughter against her by encouraging college aspirations, I simply pointed out that I was supporting Lily's own goals, not imposing mine. "She's not your replacement daughter," Cassandra spat during one particularly tense phone call. "No," I agreed. "She's her own person with her own potential. I'm just making sure she has options that you and I didn't have at her age." Over time, I developed relationships with Max and Emma as well, taking them to museums and science centers, exposing them to possibilities beyond the limited worldview of our family. Max, initially shy and withdrawn, revealed a passion for astronomy. Emma, bright and curious, absorbed knowledge like a sponge. Through therapy, I continued processing the complex emotions around family reconnection. Dr. Ramirez helped me see that I could support the next generation without sacrificing the boundaries that protected my well-being. "You're breaking the cycle," she told me during one session. "That's perhaps the most meaningful work any of us can do." It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations, setbacks, moments when old wounds reopened. My parents never fully acknowledged the harm they had done, though my father occasionally showed glimmers of regret in quiet moments. Cassandra alternated between resenting my influence on her children and attempting to leverage it for her own benefit. But there were also moments of genuine connection and growth. The day Lily received her first college acceptance letter, with a substantial scholarship, and called me immediately, voice trembling with excitement. The afternoon, Max proudly showed me the A he'd earned on a science project I'd helped him conceptualize. The Christmas morning, when Emma threw her arms around me and called me Aunt Penny without prompting. These small victories reminded me that healing rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes it skips generations, manifesting not in repaired relationships, but in new ones built on healthier foundations. As for me, I found an unexpected peace in this messy, imperfect reconciliation. I had confronted my past without being consumed by it. I had maintained the boundaries necessary for my well-being while extending help where it could genuinely make a difference. I had refused to set myself on fire to keep others warm, a lesson that had taken me years to learn, but that I now embraced fully. The family that had once discarded me so casually would never be what I had needed them to be. But in finding the strength to engage with them on my own terms, I had finally truly healed. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who hurt you? How did you balance self-protection with compassion? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to stand firm in your truth and worth. Thank you for listening.